All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody has a good start to their Monday. It's storming and not nice out right now, so it could be better, I suppose. But it is nice. Conference finals going on. A lot of exciting sports going on yesterday. I would like to extend my congratulations to the Vegas Golden Knights becoming the second. And really, they're the first, considering that the first team to do it was the St. Louis Blues in 1968. And that was when they made the first six expansion teams and had the original six in one division and then the six expansion teams in the other. So their competition was significantly easier than what the original six teams had to play with. So this is really an incredible accomplishment for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, the team that going into the year was expected to win 30 games by myself, and a lot of individuals didn't really have a roster that was filled with a lot of talent. And then, just rallying around the horrific tragedy that had happened back in October, and having a lot of guys that, weren't really ever viewed as stars on any other teams before and just completely emerged as stars on this team. I mean, we know what James Neal is capable of, the postseason the Marc-Andre Fleury has had, Jonathan Marchessault and William Karlsson emerging as, top of the line stars, the veteran presence of David Perron. This team certainly has its pieces, and I think a lot of it was that everybody bought in. It's been an incredible story and an incredible run, taking down three very good teams on their way to the Stanley Cup in the LA Kings, who have a postseason pedigree unlike many other, the San Jose Sharks, and then, of course, a 5-game domination over the Winnipeg Jets after losing that first game. So really impressive. Just want to mention that. But, of course, I am mostly here to talk about basketball. Yesterday, I called the first half of the Rockets-Warriors play-by-play, compiling a lot of clips for a resume to send out in the future. So that is why I didn't call the second half. I was going to if it ended up being a close game, but certainly that was not the case. The Rockets actually suffered their worst postseason loss in franchise history last night. They lost 126-85. That even outdoing the horrific loss that they had last year against the San Antonio Spurs in the conference semifinals. That was an elimination game at home where they lost by 39. But they lose by 41 last night on the road. And I think what was maybe even worse about the fact that it wasn't just a blowout. This was a team that got outscored by a total of 30 points in the second half, being outscored 38-18 in the fourth and 34-24 in the third. Houston just could not get into a rhythm all night. And I think the biggest part of it watching this game was that they were missing a lot of really good looks, and it wasn't just shots. This was layups and dunks. And in fact, they missed 12 open dunks and layups in the first half alone. And that was a lot of what we were seeing from James Harden, an inability to finish. He only had 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists in this game. Clint Capella had a solid start to the game, didn't play as much of an impact down the road. And overall, this team was just shut out defensively. They had some decent looks from three, but shot 11 of 34 from three-point range. And everything else was just completely shut down. James Harden could not get into any sort of offensive rhythm. He was losing his handle a lot. He looked a lot more disengaged and a lot less focused than he has in the first 2 games of the series. And I think that really set the tone for Houston right away. And really nobody was able to get going for this team. They weren't able to engineer the open looks that we've been able to see them create in the past. And I think part of that, in a lot of what we've seen in this postseason when the Rockets have struggled, has been the lack of passing from Chris Paul. And if you take a look at the games that Houston has lost in this postseason, you could see one thing that has been in common with a lot of them, and it's that Chris Paul has not been passing like he usually has. And if you take a look at that loss against Minnesota, he finished with 17, 3, and 6. But go to the loss against Utah at home, he finishes with 3 assists. Go to the loss in Game 1 against the Golden State Warriors, he finishes with 3 assists. Go to the loss last night against Golden State, 4 assists despite having 10 rebounds. But if you look at the games in which Houston is winning, he's routinely tallying at least 6 assists in the range of 8 to 10. So that is the Chris Paul that everybody is used to seeing throughout his career. But while you may get a little bit of offense from him, which they didn't get last night in the context of scoring, he finished 5 of 16 and 2 for 8 from 3, so he couldn't buy a bucket either. But what we're used to seeing out of Chris Paul is that when he's not able to give you that, he's able to drop dimes. And Houston's really struggling because not only are they losing these games and not only are they falling behind without the contribution that they need from their other stars, they're not getting what is supposed to be the most surefire bet in the game, which is that Chris Paul is going to deliver some dimes and is going to be able to get your offense into a rhythm. That didn't happen last night, and it's not the first time that that's happened in this series. So that is cause for concern for the Houston Rockets, and I think maybe part of it is that just in general, this team has been playing in a lot of isolation, especially in this series. And while I was expecting that to change last night, even though they had some success in isolation play in game 2, it really didn't. They finished with 19 assists, and especially in the first half where the tone of this game was being set, Houston was not able to get into a rhythm. There was no ball movement. There was, outside of a few sequences at the very beginning of the game, there just wasn't the kind of Houston Rockets basketball that we're used to seeing. There wasn't, possessions where everybody's touching the ball, where the ball is circulating around the perimeter, where you're creating either a wide open look for a guy like Nene or a guy like Clint Capella in the post, or you're creating a wide open look for a three-point shooter. And that just didn't happen last night for Houston. For Golden State, they had actually really struggled in the first half, which is why I was kind of smelling a blowout in this game, is that Golden State really did not have it going in the first 2 quarters. They led by 11 at the half. And then I just kind of had a feeling that once things would start to get going, this team would be in better shape. Stephen Curry was shooting 1 of 7 from three-point territory in the first half. He hit 4 threes in the second half, finished with 13 field goals on 23 shots and 35 points. So he just really came alive. And I think if you're the Golden State Warriors, there wasn't anything else that you were looking for than for this big confidence-boosting game from Stephen Curry. And while he returned from injury and looked good in that series against New Orleans, it was about, can we see it in this series? Because this is when it's going to matter against a team that could probably beat the Golden State Warriors if Stephen Curry is not at 100%. But he sure looked as if he was 100%, at least in the second half yesterday. Finished with 35.6 rebounds and an assist to go with a block. Kevin Durant contributed with 25 points as well. Klay Thompson with 13. Draymond Green had 10 points to go with 17 rebounds. Quinn Cook had 11 off the bench. Just a vintage, very balanced attack from the Golden State Warriors. And a game that kind of proved what a lot of people, including myself, had kind of feared about this series, was that if Houston's not hitting shots and if they don't get into rhythm, it's not even going to be close. And that's what it was last night. It was a 41-point game. And a big reason for that was that Houston was never able to string any sort of momentum together in that game. And especially in the second half, they were just absolutely blown out of the water. And I think a lot of the same was seen in the Eastern Conference Finals in Game 3, where the Boston Celtics, as much as Cleveland had looked a lot better, especially getting shots to fall from guys like George Hill and J.R. Smith, that backcourt was finally contributing, and Kyle Korver not missing a three-pointer in Game 3. But I think another big part about that Game 3 in the East is something that we saw similar with the game last night. It's that Boston just was disengaged in the game. They weren't able to string together any sort of momentum. The ball movement wasn't there. But I think most importantly, if there is a big difference about those 2 games, the one on Saturday and the one last night, so I think Boston was getting a lot of good looks throughout the course of the game. I mean, Houston had their share of wide open layups and dunks in the first half, but they were very aggressively defended in the second half. Whereas Boston, while there were certainly some possessions where they were very challenged defensively by Cleveland, I don't really think that was the principal part of this. I mean, the Celtics were just abysmal shooting the basketball in Game 3, especially from three-point range. And if the Celtics are going to shoot 6 of 22 from 3 and the Cavaliers are going to make half of their threes and make 17 of them, that you're probably not going to have a very good chance to win the game. So as far as that series goes, I would not be surprised to see some changes for Brad Stevens, maybe potentially inserting Aaron Baines or Semi Ojeleye back into that starting lineup, maybe even an outside chance of Greg Monroe, although I would think that Baines and Ojeleye are more likely to get the nod because of their ability to shoot three-pointers. So I think you might see Marcus Morris go back to the bench, who definitely struggled with guarding LeBron James on Saturday, and that should be a really interesting game tonight. I honestly have no idea what to expect. I think it's likely that Cleveland evens up the series. However, I think that if I can anticipate one thing, it's that this game is going to be the first legitimately close one of the series. I think that this game is going to go down to the wire. I think it's going to be a 1 to 3 possession game by the end of it. And I think you're going to see both teams string together some impressive runs. You may even see a duel between LeBron James and insert whatever Celtic is going off on this given night, because they do it by committee a lot of the time. But I am anticipating that. I'm anticipating a close game. And at that point, it'll be the battle. Really, if it does come down to a 1 or 2 possession game, it becomes a battle of LeBron James and Brad Stevens. And that'll be really interesting to see how tonight's game will pan out, especially if there's any major adjustments made by the Celtics. But other than that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in. I will be trying to do more play-by-play calls. Thank you for everybody that tuned in yesterday to that. I will be trying to do that more, especially once baseball season, or I shouldn't say once baseball, I should say once basketball season ends. I'll probably call a lot of baseball games moving on throughout the summer, but definitely keep an eye out for that. And thank you for tuning in to this. This has been Peter Marzano. Have a good Monday.